Welcome to Ghana Great and Strong. And this evening we are continuing with the series that we started on starting and running a business. So this is part 3 in the series, starting and running a business. And for today, we are going to talk a bit about history. Many people say that if you know your history, then you know where you've come from. Then you also know the things that have been done right, and then you know the things that didn't go well, so we can make corrections, so we can do more of the good things. But also, sometimes in Ghana, we seem to think that entrepreneurship or building a business is something that just started a few days ago. Well, it didn't just start a few days ago. And of course, our people have been trading, our people have been farming, our people have been doing all manner of other activities. And so they have run businesses before. But I want to take you back and so that we can get a perspective of what had happened in the past, particularly after independence in 1957. So it's good to know our history. So today we'll talk about our history. But let me go back. We started this series. The first part was about failure. And our point on that one was to just let everybody understand that if you're going to start a business, if you want to run a business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, that you must know that starting, running a business carries with it some risk, that you can succeed, you can also fail. So failure was the first part in the series that we talked about, and that there are many different challenges, many different problems, a number of difficulties that can have a business go bad and not succeed. And I made the point that depending on who you talk to, what you read, and what your source of information is, 2/3 of businesses fail within the first 2 years, or 1/3 of them fail within the first 2 years. But failure definitely happens. We also, in part 2 of the series, we talked about what kind of business would be the right thing for you. And so I talked about opportunities, particularly in agribusiness, the kinds of things that we eat, particularly if you consider where we are in Ghana, that food and food-related businesses, they are good ones. But if you're going to start a business, start it for the right reasons. Don't do it because someone else is doing the same thing, and so you think it will be good for you. Don't do it just because you are hungry. You should know that starting a business, it needs money, but money is not the main point in getting into a business. So we've talked about so many different things, and today we are going to talk about our history in terms of starting and running a business. Remember, there's one definition of entrepreneur, a business person, that I like, and that says an entrepreneur, a business person, is a person who invests money in and organizes an operation to translate an idea into a marketable product or service in order to gain a financial return. So somebody invests money, organizes an operation translates an idea into a marketable product or service in order to gain a financial return. So, what has our history been? You know, there's someone in the pre-independence era that I want to bring up. That when we talk about entrepreneurs, our history of starting and running businesses, we don't have a lot of written records. And I've searched and searched and searched to find names, to even find the remnants of businesses that have been there. I know when I go to my own family, I had a grandfather who worked with the colonial authority in Nigeria for a long time. When he came back to Ghana, he started a number of small businesses. He had a farm. He did fishing. He owned some canoes. He put up a building and opened a store, and so on and so forth. But then he passed away in the 1950s. When he passed away, well, the businesses also went away. We have had instances and instances of people who have started businesses and the businesses have gone away, and we don't know who these people are. We don't know what exactly it is that they did. And because we haven't been chronicling what had happened in the past, well, we've lost a lot of this history. But there's this just one man that I want to bring to your attention. Many people know George Alfred Grant as Pa Grant. And many people don't know him because of business. They know him or have heard about him because of politics and because of the struggle for independence. But people don't think through to find out, well, how come this person, besides his love for his country and for African people and so on and so forth, he was involved in the struggle for independence. Many people don't realize that he was one of the key financiers, one of the key people who financed the independence struggle from way back. But how was he able to do it? Was he able to do it because he was a government employee? Was he able to do it because he was employed by one of those international trading companies of the time? No. He was able to do it. He was able to do it because he was an entrepreneur. He was a business person, and a big one at that. And so let me just, for information purposes, let everybody understand that George Alfred Grant, known as Pa Grant, who did a lot for his country. He was an indigenous business person, and he was born in 1878 in a place called Benin, in western Nzema area, a western region of Ghana. But he was also born into a merchant family. So he was born into, if you will, business and into an environment of entrepreneurship. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a history, who his parents were, who his family, the ones who came before him, and we knew exactly what is it that they were into? Well, what we know is he was born into a merchant family and that he was the son of someone called William Minot Grant and a Madame Adjoa Biekwi, and was the grandson of Francis Chapman Grant, who was the proprietor of the Gold Coast Times and the treasurer of the Fanti Confederation. That's a lot of history there. So it is this man who established in 1896 his own company called the George Grant and Company. He was a timber merchant, and he did a lot of exporting of timber, and became, at a time when this trade was dominated by European trading companies, he visited Britain in 1905, and by the time by 1914, George Grant had built up business contacts with all manner of people in Europe, so much so that he chartered ships between 1914 and 1919, chartered ships to send timber to the UK, Britain, and the US. So he even opened his own offices in London, Liverpool, and Hamburg. And then in Ghana itself, he had offices in Achim, Buakwa, Sekandi, and Dunkwa. So here we are. I mean, this business person, I'm told, was one of the people who led in introducing pipe-borne water for the first time in Axim and Sekandi. So here is someone we must not forget when we talk about entrepreneurship, business as part of our history. But then today I've also told you that he was the grandson of someone else called Francis Chapman Grant. This Francis Chapman Grant, he was the proprietor, the owner of the Gold Coast Times, and treasurer of the Fanti Confederation at the time. So it wasn't just, and it is not just today, that we started to know about entrepreneurship, owning businesses, or even being interested in cross-border or international trade. It's been done before. We just need to know what our history is. Many of us, we hear about the name AGI, Association of Ghanaian Industries. Now, yes, some of those industries are multinational companies. Some of those industries were started by non-Ghanaians. But if we go into the AGI and its own history, we will learn a little bit more about our own history of entrepreneurship. We need to know the names. We need to know the companies. We need to know what our people have gotten into before. And so, right after independence, the government then, led by Kwame Nkrumah, started an import substitution industrialization policy. And so the development of manufacturing sector in particular was spearheaded by the state. And there's some multinational companies such as UAC, some Lebanese and Indian industrialists got involved. But then some indigenous people in Ghana felt that if industrialization was to take hold properly, that if businesses were to thrive and last long, then we needed to have indigenous industrialists to participate in this sector of the economy. And so in 1957, we are told that almost about 10 or so indigenous industrialists, they came together to form what they call the Federation of Ghana Industries. And they were led by the late Mrs. Esther Oklu. Oklu, the one we all read about, who started in Kulenu Industries, who became the first president. And there were other ones, a Reverend T.A. Ajiti, and a man called Alfred Gazy, another one called J.A. Brenya, K.A. Agbemabiasi, David Ziga, and K.J. Kubchandani, and some other people. And they had an objective to protect the interests of the emerging indigenous manufacturers. So, of course, there were other indigenous entrepreneurs. Some had owned small hotels. Some were into publishing. Some were into trading of all types, of course. And there were the industrialists, particularly the emerging indigenous manufacturers. And then in 1961, a number of them got together once again and broadened the base of the federation to include both indigenous and foreign-owned manufacturing companies. So the name of the association was changed from the Federation of Ghana Industries to the Ghana Manufacturers Association. And then in 1984, the need for all sectors of industry to come together so that it wouldn't just be manufacturers. A number of groups got together, insurance companies, Liquor Manufacturers Association, Printers and Paper Converters Association, Furniture and Wood Products Association, Ghana Timber Millers Association, the Advertising Association of Ghana, and so many others. They all got together and changed the name and organized themselves as the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI. So that's how AGI of today, that is where it had come from. And so I want to read to you the lists of the people who have been the heads or the presidents of the AGI from the beginning, so that you know some of the names, so that at least you hear some of the companies that had been there before, and some which still exist today. And 1957 to 1961, Dr. Esther Oklu in Kuleni Industries. Then 1961 to 1965, it was Mr. Alfred Gazy, and his company was Gazy West Africa Limited. Then 1965 to 1968, it was Mr. Miles C. Hagan. He represented Lever Brothers Ghana Limited, which of course was not an indigenous Ghana company. Then 1968 to 1969, called Mr. E. Akwa Harrison, and his company was called Obunuma Packaging Limited. Then 1969 to 1971 was Mr. C.C. Keba and his company, Economic Industries Limited. Mr. Gazy came back again to become president 1971 to 1973. Of course, his company was Gazy West Africa Limited. And then Dr. Oklu came back again as well, 1973 to 1975, with Nkulenu Industries Limited as the president of the AGI. And then in 1975 to 1978, Mr. J.K. Roxon. J.K. Roxon, his company was Super Blades and Metals Manufacturing Limited. Super Blades and Metals Manufacturing Limited. He became president 1975 to 1978. And guess what? Dr. Oklu of Kuleni Industries came back a third time to be president, 1978 to 1980. And then 1980 to 1986, Mr. Apia Menka of Apia Menka Complex Limited was the president, 1980 to 1986. And then 1987 to 1993, Dr. John Kobina Richardson of Pioneer Tobacco Company, which also was not an indigenous company, he was the president of AGI 1987 to 1993. And then one of the indigenous manufacturing giants of the past, Mr. J. Atta Addison of Multi-Paper Sacks West Africa Limited. If you go to Takoradi, that is where the business was. He was the president 1994 to 1999. From 1999 to 2001 was Prince Kofi Klugesen of Klugesen International Limited. And I'll come back to Prince Klugesen. 2001 to 2003 was Mrs. Elizabeth Joyce Villers of Camelot, Ghana Limited. And from 2003 to 2005, Prince Kofi Klugesen came back to become president again. And from 2005 to 2009, Mr. Tony Botin Jesse, Tropical Cable and Conductor Limited, became the president, 2005 to 2009. And then 2010 to 2013, Nana Owusu Afare of Afarewa Group of Companies, he became the president of the AGI. And then 2014, Mr. James Asaria J of Asatec Group of Companies, he became the president of AGI. Now, I want to pick on 2 or 3 of the people who I have mentioned. Quite often when we talk about our business people, our entrepreneurs, we leave out the women. But the women have been there. They have been prominent. The story of Dr. Esther Oklu has been told a number of times. So many people know about her. But not too many people know about Mrs. Elizabeth Joyce Villers. And Mrs. Villers, you know, many of our people have talked about technology, the use of computers, and so on and so forth. Well, Camelot, if you go back, when many of us were into computer in the 80s and the early 90s, if you're looking for computer paper, that was the place to go, was to Camelot. And Camelot brought some innovation in the printing industry, including security type printing for banks, financial institutions, and so on and so forth. And so, yes, there are some other people who perhaps are better known or have become prominent, but Camelot has come to stay. And one of the good things that Camelot has done is that Camelot it didn't just remain a private company, has become a public company listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. I can tell you, I own some Camelot shares, and I know so do a number of other people. And so what was started by Mrs. Villers, I know her son is continuing in her footsteps, and that business is going on, which is the sort of thing that we like, and would like that business, like other ones also, to thrive and to do well. and to do well. Now, I bring in Prince Kofi Klugeson because also many people don't quite understand and don't know that when we got into using computers in Ghana in a big way, that Prince Kofi Klugeson was one of the people who was into the selling, servicing, and so on and so forth of computers in Ghana. And he did well. Then he went into telecommunications. He went into telecommunications, and we've talked that today you hear of MTN. Before MTN there was Scancom, Ariba, and other ones before it became MTN. Then we had Ghana Telecom, then became Vodafone. We have we've got other ones, Airtel, that has been in the business. We've got a number of other ones, but only one of them started and was run by a Ghanaian. And the one started and run by a Ghanaian. That Ghanaian is Prince Kofi Klugeson. Now, there's some controversy surrounding why he's not running that company any longer. At some point, we might need to delve into that history to understand what happened. What happened? Why this indigenous Ghanaian was shoved aside and is no longer running the business that he started. Was it from a regulatory standpoint? Was it for some whatever reason? Well, it would be good to know and learn some lessons from what happened then. Ghana Great and Strong, we, over the years, we have talked about and talked quite a bit about Ghanaian entrepreneurs. And before we went out, I talked about Prince Kofi Klugeson. And there's a company today called Espresso. And it is that company that I am talking about. It is that company that this Prince Kofi Klugeson had been, associated with. And the company that he started, Prince Kofi Klugeson started, that company was actually called Celtel. Some of you may remember. Some of you might not remember. But Celtel is the company that Prince Kofi Klugeson started. And how things changed, I don't know, but it became Kasapa, became Espresso, and so on and so forth. All I am saying is that it is important that we delve into that history, because telecommunication is an important area. It's an important part of any business. I don't know whatever that happened. I'm not on anybody's side, but when indigenous entrepreneurs start something, and some problem comes up, it is important that we make sure that we understand what is it that happened, so that we can learn some lessons from So from that perspective, that I'm interested to understand what happened so we can learn some lessons from the past. And this is not the way back past. We're just simply talking about the 1990s, the 2000s, early 2000s, and so on and so forth. So it's not way back history. It is recent history that we are talking about. So let me leave it there, and we'll continue with our discussion. Now, what I also want to pass on to you, well, some of the messages that we have been getting in all of this. Well, there is someone who said, well, can I start a lucrative business with the capital of 10,000 Ghana cedis? Now, it's very interesting that the gentleman, Carlos Yao, starts his question with the word lucrative. You remember I said to you that when you start a business, the business, it can succeed or it can fail. Now, how lucrative a business becomes depends on so many different factors. But one factor that is important is the leadership that is given by the founder or the originator and the person who leads the business, and the example that person starts the business with for other people to also emulate or to continue with. So that is really what is, for me, what is important. So it is not so much the amount of money that is put into the business. It could be 1 million, it could be 10 million, or it could be the 10,000. The important point is to start with a small enough amount of money to be able to get going, and to have the right kind of leadership and move on. Michael Grand Kalital from Dansuman, he talked about, well, is it appropriate to start a business with borrowed funds? And yes, many of us have started businesses with funds borrowed from other people. So it's not whether you borrow or not that matters. It is what you do with the money. That is what is important. And there are a number of people who have talked about, well, sent other messages. One just says that, well, a business is a war financially. Well, anything worth doing, as you know, it can't be easy. Okay, I've often told young people that if something that you are starting looks too easy, then watch out, because starting a business is nothing easy. There are a number of others. Well, someone asked me the question. Well, after working for people for 15 years, different companies myself, he's asking me that after my 15 years of working employed in other businesses, which business did I begin with? Now, I want to say to you that I started some businesses earlier. Those businesses failed. They didn't succeed, particularly the ones that I started when I was still living and working in the US, and I started those businesses in Ghana. I wasn't there to look after them. They failed. But it was when we started Gold Coasts, at that time called Gold Coast Securities. There were a bunch of them that came around at the same time. We had a company called TSS. That company is now known as Qualtech. We had a company called IBS. We had the US component of IBS and the Ghana component of IBS. The Ghana component of IBS, that we shut down for many different reasons. You can say it failed, we closed it. The US part of IBS, that has continued for all these years. And then Coconut Grove also came. So there are a number of them that have been around for about around the same time, and they've been there. Qualtech, formerly TSS, IBS in the US, Gold Coast Securities, now Gold Coast Fund Management, Coconut Grove Hotels. So they came earlier. And so if there were some beginnings of that, yes. But before all of them came Deloitte and Touche West Africa Consulting. And that was, if you want to know, the grandfather of all of them, if you want the modern group Nduom, that is the one. Deloitte and Touche West Africa Consulting. Then I want to mention there's one person that made a comment, and I like that comment. He says that he likes when we talk about our foundation of faith, and that is not one that he hears people attributing business, particularly business successes of any type. Well, we say, and we know, we have experienced that whatever we've been able to do, it has been because of the foundation of faith that we have been working with. And we believe that it works, and it works well. Well, back to the history. So if we go back to the history and the history of indigenous businesses, I want to go to Mr. B.A. Mensah. Mr. B.A. Mensah, yes, I had known him a little bit, talked to him here and there, but I didn't really know him. So I knew him from afar. But I also heard about him and experienced him a little bit, again, from afar, when he was, in his successful era. Because many of us who had went to school outside of Ghana, when we came back to Ghana for holidays and so on and so forth, and we would try to find out who was doing what in business. The name B.A. Mensah was a big one. And it was nice to see what he had started and what he had done. And someone born in 1924 in Kumewu, Ashanti, he started off not as an entrepreneur. He started off with John Holt Limited in Kumasi as a merchandising invoicing clerk. He joined the civil service. He did a whole bunch of other things. He was employed by G.B. Oliphant. And so, but then in 1951, he resigned and decided to start a business, B.A. Mensah & Co., which was an import-export company. Import-export company. He imported all manner of things. And then in 1966, he started the Association of Ghanaian Businessmen. And then in 1976 came the company that many of us know, International Tobacco Ghana Limited. And it is this International Tobacco Ghana Limited which made the fame for him. So he wasn't just processing the tobacco, but he started also growing tobacco. He even exported tobacco to other countries. And he had farms in Ijura, in Kranza, in Suta, Mampong, Ashanti, and others. So really, this is a company that did well. Unfortunately, the time came when the government of Ghana seized the company, and the company was sold with its properties sold to SNIT, to British Tobacco, to Duraplast and others. And up until today, it will be interesting to find out, well, what has happened to all of that. An unfortunate end to this entrepreneurship, this business venture that many of us admired not too long ago, actually. Let me also mention Mr. Apiamenka. Mr. Apiamenka, or the full name Akintin Apiamenka. Some people know him because of politics, but it's important to address him as a business person and entrepreneur. It's part of our history. Part of our history. Because Mr. Apiamenka was into the manufacturing of soap, Apino soap. He did some other things. His story is one of those stories that, well, let's just make sure that we just need to understand his story, also dig into it as to what happened to Apino soap, what happened to all of what he had, and why is it that it's not a giant soap making? Maybe by now that company should have branched into some other things. Well, but the saddest part, one of the saddest part of our history in Ghana of starting and running businesses has to do with Mr. Siao, okay, Mr. Siao's Tata Brewery. His full name, Joshua Kwabena Siao. Also born in 1923. Born in 1923 from Kwesi. And really, he started his life as a people teacher. Then he got into business. In 1973, opened the largest brewery in West Africa in Achimota at that time. Okay. And the date of the commissioning of that brewery, Tata Brewery, coincided with his 50th birthday. 50th birthday. And here this Tata beer was exported together with Maltex, which was a popular soft drink at the time. It was exported to Togo, Benin, Burkina, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Senegal, the Gambia, and so on and so forth. Well, but unfortunately, when the problems came, 1979, June 4th, 1979, one of the victims, one of the men who lost their livelihood, their properties, and so on and so forth was Mr. Siao. And Tata Brewery has been sold several times, now owned by Guinness Ghana Breweries Limited. There are some other ones. Many people talk about the man they call, Wachi Matres, Yao Wachi. He was into the local manufacturing of mattresses, set up a factory. Also was one of the ones whose business went away. There was a man called Kofi Usu. He acquired RT Briscoe and he formed Kowos Motors. That too went away. That also went away. And so, if you're following me, well, we have had, unfortunately, a history of starting companies, and for a variety of reasons. Whatever those people may have done wrong, or whatever it may have been, whether political, financial, tax-related, whatever it is. Celtel, recent years, Tata Brewery, Kowos Motors, Mr. Boachi and his mattress company, Apia Minka and his companies. When I go to Takoradi and I see multi-wall paper company, well, where is it? So we've had several of them. I don't even want to talk about the state companies because those are state-owned, state-organized. I am talking about the indigenous ones. It is the indigenous ones that tell our history. Fortunately, now we have a new breed of entrepreneurs that have come. Most of them started late 1980s. Now we're into the 1990s and the 2000s and beyond. So you have Dr. Otinjesi. You have, many people, when you go to Tema, you'll find some industries there. And you'll find some women who also own some of these companies. And so when you hear the name Domod is into the manufacturing of cooking, cooking items, pots and pans, but also they manufacture the basins that the women carry things in, particularly fish. But they also do the roofing sheets and other materials. Mrs. Kofi, she is together with her husband. They've started this company. She runs it, and it does very well. They are there. Dr. Otinjesi, he has been there. He's been, I've mentioned already, president of the AGI. His business is still going on. It is going on well. It is there. And then there are some of the younger ones that have come. I say younger ones advisedly, because now you learn about groups of businesses. And so you'd find that the man that is now called Tobe Afede, he didn't start out as Tobe of anything, but he was called James Apo. He, together with Kelly Gajipo and the current finance minister, Ken Oforiatta, they started Databank. He went off and started his own company, Strategic Africa Securities. And then we started Gold Coast Securities. So we were there. And then, there are the people who came before us, also haven't lived elsewhere. And they started some other companies. Then you had Carl Merchant showing up, which other people have emulated. So Carl used to be called Continental Acceptances. So Carl was there. Then now you've gotten Fidelity and some other ones that have come recently. But there is a gentleman I respect, the man who started Vanguard Insurance. He and his family, he and his children, have done well. And they're into a number of other things. Now they also own a bank. And they own a health insurance and health management company, all part of the, if you will, Vanguard family. I'm talking about the late Mr. Iwodakum. So we have had people. They have done a lot. They've done their best. One of the things that I want to do is to continue to write this history, and it will be written, to write this history so that some other people can know what's happened to us in the past, the history that we have gone through, that we have learned from, it is important that we know. So what I'm saying to you today is that this history that I've gone through just briefly today, I'm going to spend some time and write it down, document it, maybe get a little bit more into some of the specific industries, companies, individuals, get a bit of their history so that the younger people can learn from us, from the past, from what some of us are doing now, and so that they can take this stuff into the future. So we can have successful entrepreneurs, successful business people into the future from Ghana. Ahmad Dixon from Takwa asked the question, is it advisable for a man to include his wife in his business? Certainly. I am an example of that. My wife is part of my business, and it works well. It is also, we can do it the other way, for a woman to include her husband in the business. So yes, it works. Someone wants to talk about managing your finance in business. Well, we'll consider that topic. He wants us to treat that topic. If we can find some time, we'll treat that one as well another time. Someone just says, I just lack ideas on how to start a business. If you lack an idea, well, you're not going to start a business, because the business comes from ideas. It comes from what you've seen, from what you like. If you like something, that is where to look. That is what can lead you on to a successful business. That's Abdul Razak. Abdul Razak, don't just keep thinking, I must start a business, I must start a business. Work for somebody. Do some work. And you can be successful just working for somebody else and live a wonderful, great life. Because as I said, most businesses that are started, they fail. So you must have an idea that you like, something you're excited about, because problems will come. Jojo Dazi says it's the first time that he's catching this show. Well, we've been on air, Ghana Great and Strong, for more than 4 years. And I'm glad that you are able to join us today. Bryant, who's an artist and graphic designer, he wants to say, he's asking, he's talking about, well, how safe is gold fund management is. Well, gold fund, if you're talking about the gold fund that I know, the gold fund that Gold Coast company, which I'm a part of, runs, I will tell you, it is a good long-term and a safe investment avenue. If you're interested in it, please invest in it. It works, and it will work for you. Somebody says, well, if you are running a business, or you start a business and it keeps failing, what do? You stop. If something is failing, you stop. And you understand, try to understand what happened, and then you move on. Well, this is where I have to leave Ghana Great and Strong today. For joining us. We'll have another edition, part 4 of this topic next week, Saturday. This has been Ghana Great and Strong. My name is Papa Kwesi Nduom. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Yo,